Move over pumpkin pie because there's a new sweet in town. Here to claim its stake this fall is this caramel apple pie. I'm Amy Iverson and I'm here with Erin Mylroie, and she's here to show us how to create this stunning pie. And you have a secret weapon?
Absolutely.
No, secret ingredient? What should we call it?
It's a technique more than anything else, because this apple pie is really different than any other apple pie you've ever tried, and I promise you're going to think it's the best one you've ever had in your whole life. But the crazy part about it is you're actually going to bake the whole thing in a brown paper sack.
You're going to put this in the oven?
I'm going to put the whole pie in a brown paper sack. I'm going to put the oven on, I'm going to put the rack on the very lowest position, make sure the brown bag doesn't touch the sides of the oven, and then it's going to bake for 2 hours. And in that process, the apples are going to roast and get really caramely, and they're just going to be fantastic.
Does this work, what, like a plastic bag over your turkey, or what is the effect?
It's the same idea in that there's steam and just a slower process of the baking that's happening. But some air does get through in the brown paper bag, a little more than a plastic bag would.
I have never heard of this before.
It keeps all the steam and all the juiciness in the apples. They're not going to dry out quite so much.
Okay,
so let's get started. First of all, let's start with the crust right here. And let me just say right now, I'm doing a pat-in crust, and this is a really good crust for a beginner. And if you don't feel comfortable making a pie crust, buy one.
Okay, so pat in, let's just talk about this. This is instead of like rolling out.
Right. I've got a recipe and I'll share that with you. And it's a flour and an oil, and it's got some salt and some sugar. And
so my crust recipe is supposed to be rolled, but I end up doing this anyway. So is it kind of, it's a basic pie crust recipe?
That's right, it's a basic pie crust recipe, but you can just pat it in, and you're not going for perfection here. I'm always going for rustic. I'm more of like a rustic baker. If you want it to look perfect, you go buy it. All right?
But you're making sure there's no holes because you don't want stuff seeping out. You don't care if there's holes.
It's not so bad.
This is my kind of
press it up. I think that this is like, you know, a beginner would be buy your crust, and then like if you're just learning how to make a pie crust, pat it in, and then if you really want grandma's recipe, you can roll it out.
And she said if you want a perfect crust, buy one and use that, right?
Right.
Okay, so you could do either way.
Work on it and learn how to do it, but if you're into baking, you know, or if you're not, there's some options for you. Okay, then we're going to take 5 apples that I've already peeled and sliced, and then we're just going to add about 1/3 cup of sugar.
Any type of apples, or do you prefer?
I prefer, for baking, I really prefer Honeycrisp, Gala, or Golden Delicious, or Granny Smith. Right here I've got Golden Delicious and Granny Smith.
Okay, putting
2
some
tablespoons
sugar,
of flour,
some flour.
and that'll help thicken up the caramel juices of the apple. Just a little bit of spice. We're not going to go crazy. Just a teaspoon of cinnamon, and then just a little bit of nutmeg. Would you mind mixing that up?
No, I'd love to.
Okay, great. So we're just going to mix that up, and then we're going to mound those beautiful, dusty apples into the pie crust.
Now, do you like your apples to be like freshly cut, or it doesn't matter if they've sat a while?
It really doesn't matter, because if they get brown, they're just going to get a little bit brown in the pie anyway. So you don't have to be too fussy or too picky. And in fact, I like to use apples that are kind of on their way out, that are in the fridge. You know, you have some that maybe got a little bruise, or maybe have a little markup.
Why is that?
Just because they're going to do just fine in this pie, and nobody wants to eat an imperfect apple in whole form.
But
nobody minds it in a pie.
Okay.
No one will ever reject it in a pie. Okay, so we're just going to pour that in, and don't worry if you have a little dust that comes out on the top.
And you've used a couple different types of pie. I have a pie, you have one with a little scallop edge over there, and with the pat in, that makes it a lot easier.
It's so pretty on the
Does it have to be pretty deep for all these apples, it looks like?
No, not really. What you're going to do is, if you have a lot of extra apple, just mound it in the center, just because it makes a prettier pie.
Make it bigger
one more step that's going to make it just an even better pie. Right here I've got 3/4 cups sugar, 3/4 cups flour, and then I've got a half cup of butter, so a whole cube of butter. And I've just used this pie whisk to cut the butter into small pieces, and this is going to be a topping for the pie. So I just take my hands, and I just kind of make sure that's evenly distributed all over the pie. So this pie has got a flaky crust, it's got the caramelized apple, and then to make it even better, it's got this streusel topping.
Oh, I can't wait to see the topping.
You have to have a piece of this pie, Amy, for sure.
Yes, and so, I mean, this is pretty stacked up there, but you're saying it doesn't matter how high it is
not at all.
In the middle. We could just do it like that.
The apples are going to lose some liquid as they're slowly roasting, and so it's going to actually compress down a little bit.
And you can just use any old paper bag you get from the grocery store.
So when I go to the grocery store this time of year, I'm like, load me up. I want 5 paper sacks, because I know I'm going to make a ton of these pies. Okay, let's put it in the sack. And if there's print on it, I like to put the print side down. It doesn't really matter too much. Okay, so let's pop it in. And then to keep all that steam in, I like to fold it down a little bit too, just to make it sure that it doesn't touch the sides of the oven. You have to really be careful about that. It really can't touch the oven.
Would it catch on fire?
It could potentially, and I have heard people say that they've done that before.
Okay, don't let it touch the sides.
And I have never done that. And we've been making this pie in my family for over 20 years.
Okay,
and
so you staple it.
I staple it. You could use a metal paper clip as well, but I just have found that this is the easiest way.
I am so excited to try this method I've never heard of.
And you've got to try the pie. Okay, so that's it. Now this is going into the oven at 350 for 2 hours. Don't peek.
2 hours.
Don't peek.
Okay.
Just trust. Set your timer for 2
be
hours.
hard.
I know a lot of people will be watching General Conference this weekend. If you're watching General
Stick it in
Conference,
for one of the
pop it in
sessions.
during one of the sessions, pull it out, and your family can have a nice caramel pie. Now I want you to try it. You ready to try a bite?
We're going to
Okay.
do that. Now, what is the topping? You're just
Okay.
saying just any, oh, you buy your topping.
No,
I
let me
gotcha.
show you what I do to just up the caramel flavor. This is a piece of the pie. And of course, I like whipped cream on my apple pie. You know, vanilla ice cream is always really great too. But then I love, you can make your own caramel, and I often do. But this is sea salt caramel from Ghirardelli. And it's so good because
I bet.
it's really balanced with the sweetness of the pie. So we're just going to give it a little
So-
drizzle.
2 full hours, you bring it out, you put the, okay, should I try?
Let me grab your fork. Do you want a gold fork or silver?
Do you just bake it at what temperature?
350 for 2 hours.
Okay.
Bottom rack though, make sure it's not touching anywhere.
Any other tips for us while it's baking for 2 full hours?
Well, I would just say just trust the process, because a lot of times, you know, you just start to feel a little bit nervous. In the beginning, you might even smell the bag getting a little bit charred. Isn't that the best apple pie?
That is good. The topping makes it. That little crumble on the top. Okay, where do we find you on Instagram?
So I'm on Instagram at undercover.weightwatcher, where you're going to find decadent treats and healthy meals.
That is awesome. Thanks so much,
Thanks
Erin.
so much, Amy. It was great to be here.
Yum. All right, now up next, you know, you can find that recipe though on our website. Just click that recipe button, and that sounds perfect to make for General Conference, like she said, if you have those 2 hours to stick something in the oven.